You're being selfish. You should have done more. They're going to think you're difficult. Don't disappoint them. You're probably making a mistake. Most of us hear sentences like these without ever asking a surprisingly important question. Who is speaking? The thought happens inside your mind, in your own voice, so naturally you assume it belongs to you. But what if some of the thoughts you call your inner voice didn't actually begin with you? What if someone can leave the room, leave your daily life, or even disappear from your life completely, while their expectations keep talking? If psychology and self-development help you understand patterns like this, subscribe to the channel. That's exactly what we explore here. Think about the last time you made a decision that was entirely yours to make. Maybe you considered changing careers. Nobody criticized you. Nobody told you not to do it. But almost immediately, a sentence appeared. That's irresponsible. Maybe you wanted to say no to an invitation. The other person hadn't even responded yet, but you were already preparing an explanation for why you couldn't go. Maybe you bought something for yourself and immediately heard, "Do you really need that?" Or maybe you finally had an afternoon with nothing urgent to do. You sat down. And instead of relaxing, you felt uncomfortable. You started thinking about everything you could be doing. Nobody was standing there calling you lazy. Nobody was demanding an explanation. And yet, somehow you felt as though you were breaking a rule. That creates an interesting psychological question. Who are you defending yourself against when nobody is actually accusing you? Sometimes repeated messages from the outside slowly become expectations on the inside. And those messages don't always arrive as direct criticism. Nobody has to explicitly tell a child, "You're only valuable when you perform well." The lesson can be much quieter. Maybe approval became warmer when you succeeded. Maybe disagreement created tension. Maybe making mistakes produced a reaction you learned to avoid. Maybe being helpful made you feel appreciated. Maybe being quiet kept things peaceful. Maybe being responsible earned praise. Maybe being agreeable made relationships easier. None of these experiences automatically means something terrible happened. Human beings simply learn from patterns. We notice what creates connection. We notice what creates tension. We notice what earns approval. And we notice what seems to make approval disappear. Over time, the mind can turn those observations into rules. Be useful. Don't cause problems. Get it right. Keep everyone happy. Don't ask for too much. Don't disappoint people. And eventually, something subtle happens. External monitoring becomes self-monitoring. A parent no longer has to ask whether you're being responsible. You ask yourself. A teacher no longer has to question whether your work is good enough. You question it. A former partner no longer has to criticize your appearance, your choices, or the way you communicate. You may continue the criticism without them. The person who originally influenced the rule may not even know the rule exists inside you. And sometimes there isn't one person responsible at all. The voice may have been shaped by family, school, culture, religion, work, friendships, relationships, social expectations, or dozens of small experiences accumulated over years. That's why the useful question usually isn't, "Who should I blame for this?" The better question is, "Where did I learn that this was something I needed to worry about?" Try something right now. Think of one thought that returns whenever you feel uncertain. Not just, "I feel bad." Find the sentence underneath the feeling. Maybe it says, "I shouldn't disappoint people. I need to prove I'm competent. I can't make mistakes. I should be doing more. I need them to understand me. People are going to judge me." Once you identify the sentence, ask another question. When does this voice become loudest? Around authority? Conflict? Money? Rest? Relationships? Success? Does it become louder when you set a boundary? When someone disagrees with you? When you spend money on yourself? When you receive attention? When you make a decision your family might not understand? When you stop working? Patterns often become easier to understand when you notice the situations that activate them. Then ask a third question. Who does this voice sound like? Not necessarily literally. You may not hear someone's exact voice in your head. Instead ask, who first taught me, directly or indirectly, that this was something I needed to worry about? Maybe nobody said, "You must never disappoint people." But perhaps you learned what happened when someone was disappointed. Maybe nobody said, "Your worth depends on productivity." But perhaps being productive consistently brought recognition. Maybe nobody said, "Making mistakes is unacceptable." But perhaps mistakes felt unusually expensive. If one of these sentences sounds familiar, tell me in the comments. And if this video is helping you notice your inner dialogue differently, give it a like. Because here's where this becomes especially interesting. A thought can feel authoritative simply because it is familiar. We often assume that a thought feels true because it contains truth. But sometimes it feels true because we have rehearsed it for years. Think of an old recording playing through a modern speaker. The speaker is yours. The room is yours. The sound is happening right now. But the recording may have been made a very long time ago. Your inner dialogue can work in a similar way. The thought appears in your mind today, but the rule underneath it may have been learned by a much earlier version of you. And repetition can make that rule feel like identity. I'm just a perfectionist. I've always been a people pleaser. I'm just someone who worries about everything. I've never been good at saying no. Maybe. But sometimes what we call personality includes strategies we practiced so often that we stopped remembering they were strategies. That leads to one of the most important distinctions in this entire conversation. A thought can come from inside you without representing who you are today. You don't need to immediately believe it. But you also don't need to fight it. In fact, fighting every uncomfortable thought can give it even more importance. Instead, try something more curious. Imagine placing one recurring critical voice in an empty chair across from you. You don't need to picture a specific person. Just imagine that the message itself is sitting there. Maybe the message is, "Don't disappoint anyone." Look at that message and ask, what are you trying to prevent? The answer might be rejection, embarrassment, failure, conflict, disappointment, being judged, looking irresponsible, being misunderstood, being excluded. Now the thought begins to look slightly different. Don't say no may actually mean, conflict could cost us connection. Don't make a mistake may mean, being wrong could be humiliating. Keep working may mean, if we stop producing, people might think less of us. Make sure they understand may mean, if someone misunderstands us, something bad could happen. And perhaps those fears made sense in another context. But now ask the next question. Is that danger actually present right now? Not. Is this feeling ridiculous? Not. Why can't I just stop thinking this way? Simply. Is the danger my mind expects actually happening now? Maybe someone really could disagree with you. Maybe someone could be disappointed. Maybe your decision could even turn out to be imperfect. But disappointment is not automatically rejection. Disagreement is not automatically danger. A mistake is not automatically humiliation. And someone questioning your decision does not automatically mean they have authority over it. Then ask the question that creates the most separation between the inherited voice and your current self. What would I choose if I didn't have to prevent that person's disappointment? Notice that this question does not tell you what to choose. You might still decide not to change careers. You might still say yes. You might decide not to buy something. You might conclude that the criticism contains useful information. The goal isn't rebellion. It's authorship. It's recognizing the difference between a warning and reality, between an inherited expectation and a present-day choice. That creates room for a different kind of inner dialogue. The borrowed voice says, "You need everyone to understand your decision." The chosen voice says, "I can make a thoughtful decision even if someone sees it differently." The borrowed voice says, "If you rest, you're being lazy." The chosen voice says, "Rest doesn't need to be earned through exhaustion." The borrowed voice says, "Don't disappoint anyone." The chosen voice says, "Disappointing someone is not automatically the same as doing something wrong." The borrowed voice says, "Don't make a mistake." The chosen voice says, "I can make careful decisions without demanding certainty from myself." And this isn't positive thinking. You're not replacing one rigid voice with another voice saying, "Everything I do is right." That would just be another extreme. A mature inner voice can say, "I might be wrong and I can still make a decision. I can listen to advice without automatically obeying it. I can care about someone's feelings without making their feelings responsible for my choices. I can reconsider my decision without treating disagreement as proof that I failed. I am allowed to evaluate my life using the information and values I have now." That last part matters. Because psychological independence doesn't mean rejecting everything you learned from other people. Some inherited voices contain wisdom. Some rules protected you. Some values still matter deeply to you. The question is whether you are choosing them now or simply repeating them. So return to those sentences from the beginning. You're being selfish. You should have done more. They're going to think you're difficult. Don't disappoint them. You're probably making a mistake. Those thoughts may still appear tomorrow. They may appear next week. Understanding where they came from doesn't magically erase them. But the next time one appears, something can be different. Before you explain yourself. Before you apologize. Before you cancel your plan. Before you work another 2 hours just to silence the guilt, pause and ask, whose voice is that? Then ask, do they still get a vote? Growing up physically happens automatically. Psychological adulthood is different. Part of it is discovering which voices, expectations, rules, and fears you inherited before you were old enough to consciously choose them. You don't have to hate the people who influenced you. You don't have to erase your past. And you don't have to treat every inherited belief as false. You only have to become curious enough to decide whether it still deserves authority. So here's something I'd like you to think about. What's one sentence your inner critic repeats so often that you've never stopped to ask where it came from? If you're comfortable sharing, tell me in the comments. And if this video helped you recognize something in your own inner dialogue, give it a like. Then watch the video appearing on your screen right now, because recognizing the voices you inherited is only the beginning. The next question is, what happens when those old voices quietly start making your decisions for you?